What's up, y'all, and welcome to episode 3 of Feel the Heat. I'm Allana Tachauer, and I'm joined by my co-host, Michael Christian. What's going on tonight, Michael?
It's going well. We are joined by a very special guest, Greg Sylvander. I want to say I put you second behind Pat Riley in terms of
I
culture
was
rankings,
about to
like
say
culture
that.
pushing.
The culture
Wow,
don of the network by far.
that is unbelievable high praise, and I will never live up to that, but that's super cool to hear. I guess all those years of rocking a Pat Riley Godfather Avi on Twitter paid off eventually in some kind of weird roundabout way.
I mean, it absolutely paid off. We already know what you bring to the table. But before we get into any of the actual questions that we sent you, here's a surprise question. And for those of you listening, Alana has no idea what I'm going to ask here. All
I'm
right. This is to
terrified right
Greg, but
now.
Alana has no idea.
I hate when you
So
do
the
this.
name of our pod is Feel the Heat. You get that reference, right? You remember the song? Can you feel
Oh
the heat?
yeah, of
Back in
course.
the
I
what
used
was
to
it?
I used to listen to that CD on the way to Miami Arena.
Exactly. Now I
Love
want you
that.
to take this into account. Alana had never heard of the
Oh,
song before. My argument is take away the Heat fan card for at least a month. There has to be some sort of punishment. Greg,
how is this
as
a
the second in
question?
command in culture, what do you say?
I think that Alana is she is safe. We are all good.
Phew, thank you.
I
Michael,
gotta
you're trying to set me up to fail here.
I gotta
Come
go to
on
Pat
now.
Riley now to overturn this.
That
He's the
that's
only
a
one that
super
can.
like as much as a lot of older, look at me dating myself, 30 38 39 and like the 30 older 30-year-old Heat fans probably are aware of that. Like I don't know that it has made its way. It's not a it doesn't have staying power generation over generation.
True, it doesn't, but it's better than that Dolphins. What was it? Didn't somebody did a remake of it? Was it? It wasn't T-Pain. It was like Rick Ross or someone did a remake of the Dolphins
Did
fight
you
song that
just
was
mistake
terrible.
Rick Ross for
No,
T-Pain?
I'm saying I don't know which one did it. Just take us into the show,
It had to
Alana.
be bad. I never heard it.
Exactly, it was terrible.
All right, well, I think it's only fair that we start with our guest. And I just want to know a little bit about how you got into being a Miami Heat fan, because, like I said, I do see you as kind of the culture don. So, just how did you become a Miami Heat fan? What brought you here?
I'm blushing, honestly. No. So this is a fun question. So I was not very much into sports at all. Um, at a young age, like I was like I used to like get down like Michael Jackson and like
Mm-hmm.
um then got introduced to basketball through a family member. Took me to a Heat game in 1990 and it didn't really resonate with me. But the next year after that, um, it was like, I guess 91, 92, they went to the playoffs and I got really into the team. They got swept by the Bulls, and then had season tickets for a number of years. So just, living in North Miami and going to games, that was my thing. And then a big piece of it that like the way that it resonated for me in a way that actually came in handy down the road was I spent a lot of time, a lot of summers at Zoe's Summer Groove. And initially, like that event kind of teetered out, and it's not really that. I don't even know that they do it anymore, frankly. But even in the later years, it wasn't that great. But early on, like they got all the best players there. It was super open, and you could just like walk
Mm-hmm.
around. And I made a lot of friends because I went to like every event, and I was there all the time. And it's paid off, and it's cool stuff in terms of like relationships that you make. And also, I've just been a Heat fan ever since. Pat Riley. I was a fan before Riley, and when I've seen how awesome they've been since then, in terms of like the before and after, that's just made me such a proponent for everything that he's brought to the org.
I think the only other person that has a further back history with the Heat is probably Ethan. Because I mean, well, Ethan was there when the basketball started, right back in Indiana with the baskets and everything. So I'm sure Ethan has a lot of claims to this. But you mentioned Pat Riley coming in. Pat Riley, a lot of people can say is kind of the start of Heat culture, right? What is it about Heat culture that, I mean, it's such a word now. Everybody uses it. Anytime anything comes up, somebody's playing hard defense, it's culture. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
loses weight, culture. Like some undrafted player does well, culture. What is it about culture that just really resonates with you? Why is it so important, you think, to this team, to this organization, and to fans like yourself?
You know what? It's kind of sad. I actually have stopped using that word a lot lately. Like if you were to peruse my timeline over the last 18 months or so, you probably won't even see me use the word unless I'm like being very, like just being a Heat, how we are with Heat Twitter when we can be grandiose and stuff like that, because of the fact that it's become so commercialized, and it was a marketing slogan, and it kind of took the air out of what was so dope about it. I thought is that before, people talked about things like being in world-class shape and really committing yourself to playing team basketball and like sacrificing for the betterment of the team. Like that kind of stuff is all kind of cliche and it can sound a little corny, but that was stuff that if you were a Heat fan prior to Riley, you saw what wrong looked like. And then when Riley arrived, you immediately saw what right looked like. And it left such an imprint that, you get into all the other things as it relates to playing defense. And there's certain stuff that's a little too stringent. Like for a while, there was no headband rule and you had to always have your shirt tucked in, like maybe that kind of stuff in real life. That's not necessarily my vibe, but I can understand where it would be beneficial in a environment like that. So that's kind of, I just think it's the way that they go about things and it's translated to success. And not every organization can say that. The Hornets, the Timberwolves, the Magic, they came in around the same time as the Heat, and none of them have much to show for it.
And if you had to name like one moment, just like one instance that just like screams Heat culture to you, right? So Allana and I did this on the first pod. I just kind of want to, as we get guests on, I want to see what they kind of think of, right? Like what moment just like sticks out to them is like, that defines this team better than anything else.
Zoe in Game 6, no doubt.
Yep.
It would be the play where he like blocked it out of bounds and he fell down and he just like went crazy on the floor and looked like he was like having convulsions or something like that. And when he like jumped up in the air in the middle of the game, like those are those moments that flash, and they're all Alonzo Mourning moments.
Yeah.
Surprise, that kind of personify that from an image perspective to me.
Nice.
In terms of, I know you talked about the fact that right now culture, and I agree with you a little bit, it became this marketing, tactic, and I think it lost a little bit of its magic, but is there anything that you wish that could kind of come back from the old school culture in this new era? Because I think, obviously the big three had their own kind of time in there. And then after that, we've kind of gone through, we had kind of the forgotten years, and then we had, the youth movement, and now we're kind of in the Jimmy Bam days. But is there anything kind of from the old school Miami Heat basketball that you miss?
That's a fun question because I think what I miss is the rivalry aspects of it. Like when I think back to that basketball, like, no, I don't miss 87 to 85 games. Like, you know what I mean? In terms of the score and kind of like really slow paced post-centric basketball. I don't think that that's more fun to watch than what we're watching now. But if you're saying like a Heat Knicks series, like where two teams hate each other and they really like show that and it's exemplified in every play, like I would love to have some of that back. And I just feel like even this Jimmy Bam team doesn't have a real rival yet. There's nobody that we really say we hate that team because of when they went against Jimmy and Bam. The big three had those teams. So that's what I guess I'm missing is that real, true, authentic rivalry.
You mentioned the rivalry, and Allana, I know we're going to move on to the next segment. I want to let you do that one, but you mentioned the rivalry just because I grew up with a dad who was a Heat fan from the beginning, right? I kind of know a lot of that old school stuff, like that Heat Knicks, those battles. The Heat play the Knicks right now in the playoffs. How do you think it ends up? I just got to get it out there because I hate the Knicks. I just can't with that organization. Thank you.
Listen, Jimmy Butler is having none of this nonsense with the Knicks. They are total garbage and they will fold in the playoffs. So but there'll be a lot of Knicks fans. If there's people in that arena, Knicks fans will show up and they're front runners too. I used to go to all those games and it was a lot of fun, but damn, there was a lot of Knicks fans in those buildings.
There's always so many New York fans in all of the South Florida things. Like I went to a Yankees game at Marlins Stadium. It was ridiculous. New York people, just get out of Florida. Okay. The Knicks suck. Deal with it. I'm over it. Allana, you can take us out before I keep bashing New York.
Well, no, it's a good transition because we want to just touch upon a little bit of what happened this past weekend. I'm curious if you thought that we were going to go 2-0 because I'll be fully honest. I thought it was going to be 2 losses back to back and that we were going to be done. So talk a little bit about how this weekend was for you.
I mean, it was best case scenario, 2 20-point wins. I mean, I felt nervous about the Charlotte game. Not going to lie. I thought they'd get the Cleveland one, but I did think that they would get both of these games because I feel like they're in a place where if Spo has to, he'll play Jimmy 35 minutes. Like they're just down the stretch here at a place where I feel like the games that they're supposed to win, they're going to get in the remaining schedule. And I know they've done nothing to prove that like recently is an indication of what will take place. But you know me, I'm the eternal optimist. I think that they like the Dallas game tomorrow night, I'm not so confident about because they're also in a big time playoff race. Just got waxed by Sacramento. So that's never a good thing coming into Miami off a loss. So, but these games against the Charlottes and the Clevelands, I thought it couldn't have gone better, particularly because Jimmy and Bam got to sit in, late in at least the first game.
And it's just been something with this team lately where I don't even want to say lately, this whole season, you have those games against, let's put, lesser opponents in air quotes. You guys aren't watching the video. I'm doing the air quotes pretty viciously, but you kind of expect having some of these wins every once in a while where it's by double digits. It's a little bit more comfortable. You can sit those guys at the end, and they hadn't been able to do so for a while. And you wouldn't expect now of all times for that to be coming out, considering that they're missing guys. We got some new pieces coming into the rotation. What do you see clicking in this team the past couple games where they're starting to build those larger margins?
They hit some threes, and Jimmy Butler is, doing everything out there. I think, he's having like the best season I think he's probably ever had. I mean, maybe not scoring wise, but everything else. So that's really what it is. And it's also like, it's a make or miss league. I can't emphasize that enough. Like the reason why the Heat were so amazing last year is that they were just killing it from 3-point line. I forgot what their season long percentage was. I think around 39%, if I'm remembering correctly. They're way down from that this year. And that's indicative of everything there. So they hit more shots, and I know it doesn't always translate that way, especially in the last game, but against Cleveland, I think that they really shot well. And that's something that they got to do. I mean, this team with 2 non-shooters leading the way, all those other guys got to hit.
Well, and it's interesting you say that because we kind of had a discussion about this on, the post up yesterday. I was kind of talking about the fact that for me, it is more about well-rounded basketball. And I think that's kind of why we've been doing better. I know a lot of people are so kind of gung-ho on Bam and Jimmy having to have all the offensive load each and every night. But I think, to be honest, and to your point, because they're not necessarily shooters, we should not be only counting on them to get those wins. So how do you kind of see that playing out against Dallas?
That's a tough one. I mean, for Dallas, for me, it has more to do with is Luka just going to just go nuts. And there's always going to be one guy that we don't really know much about that's also going to go nuts. So like 2 of them compounded together is just never a good deal. But this particular matchup, I'm just not that confident about. I hate to be, because I'm usually the guy who never picks against the Heat, but this particular matchup, unless Jimmy can neutralize Luka, I know Porzingis isn't playing. They got to have a crazy night from Duncan. I don't know. I don't have the answers to this. I'm not saying Dallas is any world beater type of team. It's just the weird circumstances of them winning 2 in a row and Dallas coming off a loss that I just think is a recipe for a loss.
It could also be the J Rich revenge game.
There's the guy who's going to go off.
I hate to say it. I hope I don't just jinx it. I miss J Rich every single day. Like I was such a diehard fan, and I'm still just mourning the loss of that. So if we have to lose, I would rather it be in the hands of J Rich, but I would rather obviously take the W.
He's such a cool dude too.
I thought your favorite player was Dion Waiters from that time, though. Allana, you said that he was the guy. Him and Hassan Whiteside, you had them tied for first.
Never said that, Michael. Never said that. Thank you, though.
It just feels like with the Mavs, though. I don't know what it is, but there are franchises that have this like connection that never goes away, and it feels like the Heat and Mavs have that connection, and it feels like it started in 06, and it's not a matter of who's on the team. It's just those 2 teams. Right. There was 06. There was I don't even want to say it. I'm not even going to say it, right? We know the next one. I can't.
Yeah.
It literally kills me. I can't talk
Don't
about it.
ruin our Mondays.
It just feels like those two teams, we've been going back and forth for so long, and they just seem to have our number when it matters. And it's just, Jay Rich could probably go off. Jalen Brunson could probably go off. Luka might have the best game of his whole career, but probably not, right? Because he'd find a way to only lose to players that aren't all-stars. I mean, Malik Monk is Michael Jordan. I am going to die on that hill. He is Michael Jordan through and through when he plays against the Miami Heat. It's astounding, honestly. But one player that has been doing really well for the Heat, that has been a bit of that, because we have random scrub Heat killers, and there is now, I'm going to call him a random, Heat murderer. Like, I'm going to call him that. Right? The other side of it, Dewayne Dedmon, let's be honest, he kind of came out of nowhere. And I will say this, and please fight me on this if I'm wrong, Greg. I think the Heat got a little lucky with that one. There was a lot of
sure.
Right, okay, good. Because there was a lot of other guys they wanted to get, and none of them came here. So Dewayne kind of fell into the lap and worked out great, but man, that just fell right
was
there.
Was it luck or was it the universe intervening?
It's the universe. There's
I'm outnumbered 2-1.
We're not going to go down this road.
We deserve something good this season, and that was it. Dedmon has been a freaking rock star, and I don't see it changing anytime soon.
It's so true. Like, how funny is this? I got the most hateful DMs of my entire life when I said that LaMarcus Aldridge was coming, and then he changed his mind. And it turns out that it was like such a blessing in disguise. It was also a blessing in disguise that Andre Drummond and Blake Griffin and all these other guys that we were fawning over for days, not necessarily
Michael was included in that
three.
fawning over.
Okay.
Michael, I think, once said that we should get rid of everyone for Blake Griffin.
Literally no one said that. Time out. No. Here's what happened, Greg. I'll tell you exactly what happened. I said the Heat at that time, which was right at those lowest points. It was around the 7-14 time. I was saying the Heat have no right to like reject players who would want to be in Miami because it's not working out. I was never for trading for Blake Griffin, but if Blake Griffin was on the buyout market and he's like, I want to go to Miami.
Yeah,
my claim was the Heat are in no position to say no.
Still to this day.
See, but this is the funny thing about all this. And I've propped up Riley for so many years and Andy and all these guys. Everyone has to recognize that this entire run, the whole Pat Riley era, if we're going to take this all the way back, there's luck involved in all this stuff. Like, and like Dedmon, I feel like he kind of fell in their lap there at the end. They were monitoring him via injury because he was coming back, and he's been better than any of these other guys. And I don't think they anticipated that. I think the same thing happened with Hassan, to be frank. I do not think that was like some gem that they mined. That was just a happenstance moment, and he started to produce. Now what they do after that, when they mold guys and get the most efficient seasons out of them and stuff like that, that's a different conversation. And it'll be interesting to see how they approach Dewayne Dedmon this offseason, because I'd love to see him back.
And you know what? You touched on him, and we all give Hassan a ton of crap, and rightfully so in a lot of ways. I have
actually not done so. I've just called him a child that doesn't know better. But
guilty.
Part of that.
Thank you. Like, come on. Everybody's giving Hassan crap. Calling him a child is giving him crap. I remember watching Hassan's first few games. I was at a game. He was this kind of lanky dude. He looked kind of uncoordinated. And it was like, what are we doing with this guy? Like, he's had all the tools, but none of the skill. I was like, if they could teach him how to catch the ball and dunk it, it's fine. And then he kind of took off. It got to his head and went south. But when Hassan bought in, he was useful, right? Hassan coming off the bench for this team, if he could buy in, would make sense, right? And I think that's kind of what we're getting out of Dewayne Dedmon, which is kind of those early stages of Hassan where he was still buying in and still an asset to the team as opposed to just to himself. I don't know if you disagree with that, Greg.
No, I totally agree. But I don't think that Dedmon is the type of player that's going to end up doing well. One, he's not going to get a max contract, so that's going to help. He's going to stay hungry. But two, there's no prior evidence to suggest that he's going to be the type of player that's going to start to be a malcontent in any way. And that was a thing with Hassan Whiteside that carried him prior to him being in Miami. If he didn't get everything exactly his way, in the ball and his spots and his touches and his playing time and all that, and his 2K rating up, and I sound like an old man saying get off my lawn, but oh well. He was always going to be like that. And I don't think Dewayne Dedmon, like, what has he said anything? Like, have y'all heard from him?
My deep hope is that Dewayne Dedmon starts putting up Snapchats of him talking to fish. just to really give us all PTSD. I don't know if you were ever following Hassan when he did that.
Oh,
Allana.
yes.
Oh, absolutely. He was like one of my favorite Snap follows. I see. The thing is, I just found him hilarious, and I know everyone got really perturbed with him and just frustrated, but I'm just like, he doesn't know better. Like, he is who he is, and we either stick by him or we don't, and we didn't, and that's that. One thing I did want to ask you though, Greg, how do you see Precious kind of fitting into things, or do you just kind of not see him being around at all anymore now that Dedmon is such a star on the court?
Oh, wow. The tough questions coming at me here. So I was really in on Precious early in the season. I think we all were. We felt like he was like an ascending young player, and he hit the wall in a way that a Heat rookie hasn't hit the wall in quite some time. I think that he will be a player that will benefit most from not only an off season, but maybe spending some time in the G League, maybe a summer league of some type. Like, he just needs to be seasoned. And but so all is not lost, I guess. Like, I think that we get in the habit of, when a player doesn't come out and immediately dominate, or not even dominate, but be productive and be a part of the rotation, we start to write him off, and they're too young for that. Like, especially these days, it takes guys a couple years, big men especially. You saw how Bam's development is, so I wouldn't write him off. But honestly, I think he'll be part of a trade package much more likely than he will be any key cog in this Heat franchise going forward long term.
I think it was a bit of we all got spoiled, especially last season, right? Like, Bam wasn't a rookie by any means, I'm gonna say, but Bam is still very young. And so the ascension he made last season, and then you had Tyler coming in and immediately making the impacts he did. Kendrick Nunn coming in, Duncan Robinson, who had barely played. He's older, but he had barely played in the NBA. Everyone was contributing right away, so Precious just had that against him. So
yeah,
I agree. I think Precious needs some time. I think that'll help him a lot. But you talk about how Precious fits in now with Dedmon. Really, before we even move on to our last point of like what Heat Twitter is talking about and everything, I am curious to see your thoughts on this. There's a lot of excitement behind kind of running it back, right? Like, in terms of, for some people, I've seen it out there, right? Re-signing K Nunn and re-signing Duncan Robinson, and then you bring back Dewayne Dedmon, you give this crew another shot, and maybe they can get Victor Oladipo on a mid-level. People are kind of against, oh, maybe they don't need the will, maybe some of these guys. But if you spend on these guys, you're not really going to get anybody else. Are you still holding out and waiting to see like playoffs? Because that's where I'm at. I'm like, let me see what happens in the playoffs with these guys before I say sign them to whatever contracts they want.
Yeah. So I'm usually the guy who would probably be the closest to saying like keep a team together, just because by virtue of how I've seen these teams get built year over year, decade over decade. Now I'm aging myself again. Like, I know that there's certain elements of it where you have to stick with guys and you got to see things through to certain degrees. But I'm not sold on this team. Like, and they got to the finals last year. It was a special circumstance. I think anybody who doesn't recognize that the Heat benefited from the atmosphere in the bubble is lying to themselves. And listen, I was the so-called sunshine pumper on Twitter about the Heat because I'm always so positive. This team, I don't want them to do the run it back scenario. I'm not a proponent for that. Maybe they'll prove me wrong and they'll make a deep run in the playoffs. That doesn't mean I want like Tyler banished off and all this, but like, if you're talking giving Kendrick Nunn big money on a long-term deal and locking in all the guys you just mentioned, and that being the team go forward, it's not enough. And I had a conversation with Miami Heat Beats Christian Hernandez recently, and he said, we were talking about transactions and stuff and just kind of throwing ideas around. And he said, any move that doesn't help the team during Jimmy's window, get that the hell out of here. And like, the more that I marinated on that a couple of days, you guys, maybe you don't know, I meditate every single day. And yes, Heat stuff comes across the wavelengths in the mornings. And the more I sat quietly with that, like, why the hell are we all not screaming that from the rooftops? Like, Jimmy is so good right now that they need to make moves to win immediately. And if that means that this core doesn't come back, I'm all for it.
So I know Michael is like drooling over the fact that you set me up for that transition perfectly into the Tyler question, but I need to say this. Jay Crowder, are you both just feeling as bad as I am over it? Because I cannot really remember a time in at least recent Heat history where I feel like we've made a bigger mistake than letting Jay go.
So I'll just say this. if we would have given Jay the deal that he got from Phoenix, I would have not been happy, and that wouldn't have been a good move for the franchise. But this is where I will agree with you. I think what was it reported that the final 1-year offer was for Jay Crowder? I think they went to him and they said 1 year, 13 million or something like that, 14 million.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
And he said, no, I want the 3 for 30 from Phoenix. Honestly, I would have taken the 10 million you gave Myers, and I would have applied that to what you were offering Jay to keep Jay for 1 year. Like that's the goal for me. Like, I don't like the fact that they didn't pony up enough to keep him for the 1 year and retain flexibility. But so Jay Crowder on a 3-year deal, I'm out. But otherwise, I'm with you. Like, I was crushed that he didn't return, because we really were getting strong indications, including, your guys, Adam, Ethan, all of us were hearing you. He was coming back, and then, the bottom fell out.
He really wanted to. I had a conversation with someone within his camp, probably, I want to say like 2 months ago now. And he's still sad about it. I mean, he obviously loves the Suns and they're doing great, but he definitely wanted to return. And I think that made it even harder to know, because it's one thing if, the Heat went back and forth with the guy that wasn't necessarily sold on it or wasn't sure, but because he was so in. But with that said, another guy who's a little bit polarizing in terms of if we should keep him or not, Tyler Hero. And I know Michael and I feel like sometimes we agree and sometimes we don't. It depends on the topic at hand. Michael's making a face at me. I'll give you your 2 seconds to defend yourself here. But Greg, what are your feelings on Tyler? And I guess specifically right now, Heat Twitter is kind of pointing out the fact that we're doing a lot better without him.
So that's an interesting thing. When you guys sent me the show sheet and you mentioned that they're doing better without Tyler, that angle of this conversation is not one that I had engaged in, quite frankly. Because, like, to me, the noise has been about, is Tyler Hero like a good player? And do you want to keep Tyler Hero? And like, do you like Tyler Hero as a prospect, or like all that kind of stuff? And I just think that is such ridiculous prisoner of the moment conversation that I almost like hate the fact that we legitimize it and dignify it by having those conversations. But to your point, what have they won now? 8 of 10, 6 of 7, something like that. I can't keep track now. And it's been primarily without Tyler. So I think like there's a short-term conversation to be had, and there's a long-term conversation. In the short term, I think that Spo's still going to give Tyler a shot, because they're not going to shelve their best asset and their best young player. But I could see a situation where in a critical game 5 in the playoffs, he only gets 13 minutes and he's a non-factor. But if you're saying like, ship him off for Kyle Lowry, I wasn't about that. And I don't like that when you could just get a guy like Lowry in the offseason and not give up Tyler Hero.
And this is what I will say. I was actually, I remember being on that Floor Is Yours with Greg, and the argument came up of Tyler versus Dunn. We talked about it a little bit before we started here.
I'm surprised we haven't heard more about that. Like, they haven't came back and thrown it in our face more.
I think if they would throw it at anybody, it's you. I'm a bit forgettable to a lot of them, and I'm fine with that, right? Because
I actually think Greg saved you from going under the bus on that argument.
Honestly, if it was just me, maybe they would have come after me like super crazy. Look, here's the thing. And last week I mentioned some stuff. We talked about Depot versus Nunn, and when that ever happens, I just think for a fit for the team, Tyler is a good fit. He's had a rough season. No one's going to doubt that. Kendrick Nunn has been playing than Tyler Hero as of late, for sure. I think to be ready to banish Tyler, though, because of the last few games, I think is a bit ridiculous. And on top of that, also look at the competition the Heat have been playing. It hasn't really been the best competition. So yes, the Heat are playing better, but do I think the Heat are playing better because Tyler's not in there? No, I can't say that. I can't say that that's a one-to-one correlation. I think it happens to be happening around the same time, but to say, oh, Tyler being out is why this team is playing the way they are, I think that's ridiculous. There are arguments to be made, though. Should Nunn maybe take some of those fourth quarter minutes? Yeah, the way he's been playing, for sure. Maybe there needs to be some lineup changes. Maybe some of the minutes need to be reallocated. But to say that Tyler shouldn't be on this team because of the way they've performed in their last 9 games, I think it's just way too premature.
Can I ask you two guys a question?
Absolutely.
Have you noticed how much less, this was something that just was brought up recently, like 30 minutes ago to me. And it dawned on me, like, Jimmy hasn't done the whole Tyler Tuesday thing at all this season. Has he shouted out Tyler Hero once in any like video thing. Like that is weird to me a little bit, and it just dawned on me today. And I'm probably being a little bit of a drama bleep starter, but that struck me as odd. How much in year one Jimmy propped up Tyler, and he's not propping up Tyler in that same way, in the same vocal way. Do you guys think that there's anything to that at all?
I think that Jimmy's just the kind of guy who, for better or worse, he seems to give praise when someone is doing well, but doesn't necessarily act as a motivator when they're not. And I really think it comes down to that, because I think, he has no problem calling people out, but I've just noticed that he either gives people props or he just kind of gives feedback. So it might just be because, Tyler obviously is having a rough season. And out of everyone, I don't think that he necessarily would be someone to call out. But that's an interesting point that I haven't really thought of either.
Yeah, I think with the Jimmy stuff, Tyler's already getting really hype. I mean, he's got the bowl from Chipotle. He had his cereal. I think he's been getting his stuff elsewhere. He's growing, right? He's doing his brand. And I think when Jimmy came in and Tyler came in, he kind of took him under his wing. He's like, hey, this is how you're going to do it. I wouldn't say there's so much of Jimmy's not doing it because him and Tyler might be having friction, although I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Like maybe it is. And I know that's not what we're saying, but it's also, you kind of look at it and you're saying, well, maybe he's just kind of letting him, like, Tyler, go be your own guy. I don't need to promote you anymore. I don't need to boost you up. Like you've got way too much confidence already. Like I'll bring you back on the court when I kick your ass out there in practice.
And and we can pivot to your topic. I don't mean to derail your guys' episode. The thing to me is that, like, I didn't mean it in a robotic way, like that he should like schedule and that every Tuesday afternoon he's going to make a post about Tyler Hero. Like it's more about like organically you see guys having fun and doing stuff like that. And it just doesn't seem like that same thing has gone on.
No, and I think, I caught myself being pretty surprised even when Jimmy came out with that headband, and after the show, in the interview with Jack, Spam was like, he just did that to lift everyone's spirits. He got rid of it at the half and it was just for that. But it dawned on me in that moment that, like, to your point, they haven't really been having fun in the same way that they used to. And look, I get it because they came out of a pretty grueling and weird season last year. They fell short, and I still will continue to say this. I think if Goran was healthy, they could have taken the title. And to go back and not only then have to defend yourself, but then, when you're in the midst of doing way poorer than anyone expected, I just feel like, Jimmy's taken on a lot of the pressure. And I think that's maybe why his attitude and just his mentality has been a little different this year.
And I think too, with like the way they were last season, right? Before the bubble, before everything happened, nobody knew what we had, right? Everybody knew we had Jimmy Butler. Cool. Jimmy Butler is great. Bam is improving. Tyler looked like a good pick. Nobody really knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. So they went into that with no expectations at all. Whatever they did, we were going to say, okay, they can improve, they cannot. And they just came out the gate running. And then they went into the bubble as a 5 seed. Everyone said, oh, they can probably make it to the second round and get ousted. And then they have the run that they have coming into this season. Now everybody's looking at them as, are you going to be able to defend Eastern Conference title? I'm sure not only was that hard on Jimmy already having to lead this team, all those young guys. I mean, you have one season and that's your one season. Mm-hmm. Your only time in the NBA is literally the finals. Yeah, dude, I'd be stressed out. Every 3-point shot after that, I'd be freaking out. I'm like, people are actually watching me now because I scored 37 points in the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, if I score 14, they're saying, hey, you're not good enough.
Well, and I think there's something to be said for the fact that both Duncan and Tyler were kind of sucking around the whole, trade deadline.
I was
like,
just gonna say
their production
Clutch
went
Adam
down.
Did it to him.
Yeah, I mean,
listen, I wouldn't be surprised if they know him by name. They like text, like Duncan text Tyler. He's like, that Clutch guy's at it again. What the heck? Gosh, leave us alone, bro.
But it has really gotten to them this season. And I think, age matters, and not being necessarily, to Michael's point, on the big stage yet until last year. I think that got the best of everyone. And I hope that if we can turn things around and make it far enough, or even into the playoffs at all, that old team mentality and chemistry comes back. But it has definitely been a shift that way, I think.
Yeah, and we're gonna ask you two more questions. We only have one more on the sheet, but I have one more that's been kind of hitting the news a lot with the NBA recently. So I'm gonna leave that one at the end because I think I'm gonna win this one against you, but we'll see. But we do this thing that we started up last week, culture player of the week, right? Whatever player, and we call it culture player of the week, so it doesn't have to be the player that played the best necessarily, but the one that they did something in the past week that really stood out to you that was like, this is what the Heat are, right? This is what we bring to the table. They're bought in. Right. If you had to pick one player, and we can let Allana go first if you want some time to think about it, Greg.
We're stealing this segment for 5 on the floor.
Oh man,
no,
what the heck? I'm just kidding. Hey, if you did, I'd be honored.
Well, Michael did not like my answer when we were making sure we didn't have the same player beforehand. But I'm going with Max Strus. And it's not just because he went to DePaul and I went to DePaul, but don't roll your eyes at me, Michael. You had to know there's some personal.
That wasn't an eye roll. It was just they went back into the back of my head. They never came back.
But listen, he stayed so ready. You know, I mean, he had no knowing that he was going to be called up the way that he did. And for him to just go in and honestly on both ends of the court, obviously he's not some defensive powerhouse and he has a lot to work on, you know, on that end. But I think he stayed ready. I think he produced. He's always, you know, high energy guy. So I'm going to give it to him this week.
All right, Greg, you want to go with yours?
Yeah, since I know you're probably going to go with Dewayne Dedmon, and that's like the obvious choice here.
I'm actually not, but go ahead.
You're not? Okay,
No.
Well then I'm going to go with Dewayne Dedmon. I'm not going to spoil who I was going to initially take, but he had 18 and 9 against San Antonio, and then he had the game, you know, just the other night. Like he's came out of nowhere. He's doing exactly what we asked of him. He's been the shot in the arm they needed. I mean, I think it's pretty. I thought that was the low-hanging fruit here. You guys are going in different directions, but I'm interested, Michael, if you're going to go with the guy that I initially thought of. I'll let you chime in.
I wonder if it does match. And the only reason why I chose not to go with the low-hanging fruit is because I'll leave that up to Alana. Last week, she picked Jimmy. Like, oh, wow, you picked Jimmy.
And I didn't pick Dedmon on purpose.
Yeah, my goodness.
I'm the one who took the easy way out. I get it.
Maybe we match on this, though. I'm picking Duncan Robinson.
That's not where I was going.
Okay.
So this is all you.
And I'm picking Duncan Robinson, not so much because of his performances the last few games, which have been up and down, right? He's been a little bit more up and down lately than he was right after the trade deadline. He did have 20 against Cleveland, which was good to see, but his 3-point shooting hasn't been as consistent. The reason why I'm picking Duncan Robinson is because the last time we recorded Allana, they had just played the Bulls, and Duncan Robinson had some stomach issue. He had to come out of the game. He was questionable for the next game. He came out and played, and why that was important to me is Duncan Robinson in the last, like this season, the bubble, and the season before, has not missed a single game, which is incredibly hard to do and very rare for this team. I remember I argued with you guys on this on Clutch Corner way back. I said, listen, Duncan Robinson is value to me because sure, at the time you called him one-dimensional, Alana, and that's always going to be what
Are you just going to put that out there every single episode?
If Duncan gets brought up, absolutely. But I remember saying Duncan doesn't miss games, and that's important. And especially considering that his whole job is to run around like crazy to try to get open and take up a three. That's exhausting. Yes, his defense is a bit lacking, although he's getting better, but it's a bit lacking. But he does that and is always out there doing it on a team where you have a lot of guys missing time. To see him come out even after that stomach virus or whatever it was and play the next game, he's my culture player of the week just because it's another reminder Duncan does not miss time. And I pray that he doesn't miss time now that I've said that, but it's amazing that he hasn't. I'm literally shocked.
He's about to get paid.
He is about to get paid, and I'm for it. I'm with it. Allana,
yeah, but how much are you guys willing to pay?
I'm at 18.
I was going to say 16, 17 is where I think they're going to be able to get him in year one, and it'll escalate, you know, as they go, like the way the raises go. But I think for year one, maybe 16.
Okay. I think Adam said 23 on our last clip.
Oh my gosh. If that happens, insane. Like I love Duncan Robinson, and 23 million. Like if he does something crazy in the playoffs and we go to the finals, fine, give him the money. Cause I want that rush, that run. But 23 sounds too high to me.
And I think I'd give him 23 if he goes on that run in the playoffs, especially because those teams are going to know how to game plan against him. They kind of did it in the last bubble. Yeah, like if he goes off on that, I'm with it. Give him at that point, give him 30 million. Give him the max. Pull it away from whoever else to give him the max. I don't even know. But before we let you go, I'm going to call out. And you know what? I am a fan of his. but I'm going to say it, and we can curse on this show. He's been a bitch lately. And I'm talking about LeBron bitch James. I'm sorry. His whole
I cannot be associated with what you're doing right now.
No, listen, his playing thing, that whining is ridiculous. And I know you don't like the playing a lot.
Right, though. The play-in is dumb, and there is no business for it in this league. It is stupid.
Greg.
If I wanted to watch March Madness, I would just watch college basketball.
It's a good point.
Please.
So first off, I'm extremely upset that I didn't know that we could cuss on this podcast because like I've been completely editing myself as if I'm on 5 on the floor because I'm just like
at one point you did say you were gonna say shit and you like
You're
stopped
right.
And it sounded exactly like if it was edited out. Like I heard it, I'm like,
yeah, that's Ethan deep conditioning from 5 on the floor. So damn. LeBron was on some total fuck shit the other night with what he said. Like but not because I'm gonna slander LeBron James because he's probably my favorite player that's not on the Heat, to be really honest. And like
I love LeBron too. I'm with you.
I was team Petty initially because I heard firsthand like what went down with Riley and with Mickey and with Andy, and it was just completely disrespectful. And y'all know that I'm gonna ride with that with the front office, but all that stuff has gone away. But the fact that like he's in the playing game and now he's like the person with the playing should be fired. And like, it just seemed that press conference. I haven't seen him that dejected in a really long time. And I'm interested to see if LA is, I don't know. Like, you guys think they're going to make this run? Like now they've made it really hard on themselves. They may end up going through this play-in tournament. Like it doesn't sound great. I like the idea of the play-in tournament, but what I don't like is that like the 7 and the 8 seeds have such an easy chance of falling out, because I feel like if you're the 10th seed and you're 4 games back, for you to have the chance to pop into the playoffs is just a little random, and it doesn't reward teams who were more consistent throughout the season.
I was having an entire argument earlier today with someone just regarding how, regular season doesn't matter and it's all about, playoffs. And I disagree there, but I can kind of understand that mentality. My problem with this, to your point, is that one off night for one team can completely derail everything. Exactly. And if it's against a team that, to your point, is 3.5 or 4 games out, I just don't find that fair. And I am not saying this because of where the Heat were. I was saying this when we were in the 4th seed. The entire play-in situation doesn't make any sense to me, and I wish we were gone with it. I get why people are mad at LeBron, because he's kind of going back on what he said. And I get that he's only doing this because of the situation that they're in, but I happen to agree with him just in the principle of the matter that I hate the play-in as well.
I just think, how can you, like, I can't excuse his behavior when he didn't care about the play-in until it affected him, until he had to play a couple extra games. He was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Hey, LeBron, go play at maybe one more game before you get to the playoffs. Oh no, this is ridiculous. That person should be fired. I'm with the play-in for this reason. I think it gives the 7 and 8 seed an advantage, which it does, which is 7 and 8 play. Whichever one loses plays one more game. So they basically have to lose twice to get out of the playoffs. Whereas if you're the 9 or 10 seed, you lose once, you're out. Right. At least that's my understanding.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. It's easier for 7 and 8 to stay locked in. It's just, it's a weird scenario for me. I mean, but it's done what the NBA wanted. They wanted the games at the end of the year to matter. Yep. And for more teams, it matters. And there's just no doubt about that part of it.
It does matter. And I will agree with that person that you were talking with, Allana. It wasn't me actually, but to me, the regular season, it's not that it doesn't matter, because it does. I've never been a fan of teams going full throttle all throughout the regular season. If there's something I learned back with those 2010 to 2014 Heat, you always knew where they were going to end up. It was a matter of how they were going to get there. And they learned as they were getting on, there are going to be some games where we're just going to take them off. And it sucks. I get that it sucks, especially if you're a fan paying to go to the game or whatever. But you got to stay healthy to be there, and going full throttle every single game, no matter who the opponent is, it just doesn't happen. Injuries happen.
I can't agree with that. And it has nothing to do with fans or even me wanting to see good games. I think it's completely absurd to like put all of your eggs in one basket when you have no idea what the other teams around you are going to do. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to not, kind of compete at full capacity when by the end, you don't know if 4 teams are going to lap you who were going until the end where you only started halfway in the season. For me, I would rather kind of be in more control of my own destiny and not just kind of scramble at the end. So the whole argument that regular season doesn't matter, for me, it's like the regular season it's like the building blocks to the playoffs. So I can't wrap my head around that.
And let me sneak one more LeBron thing in here. There is a little part of this though, like when I heard him make the comments and I was like, oh, look at him flip-flopping. Like there's something that is a little human about it. Like any of us are lying if we're saying that we didn't say that something was fine until it impacted us. And then all of a sudden we weren't okay with it anymore. Like, so I think it also, the fact that he's comfortable enough in his own skin to kind of like just be himself and say what he's going to say. And he's not really thinking about like the world and what they're going to say about it. There's a degree of that I think a lot of people envy, and that manifests itself in them just, insulting him.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just going to say, it kind of reminds me of the LaMarcus Aldridge situation in that he's allowed to change his mind. If he wanted to go somewhere that was doing a certain way at a certain time, and then he kind of saw what the team was progressing, he's a human being. He's okay to make a decision and change his mind on it. And I think so many times people just forget that. And I think your point about LeBron is a good one in that, he might have felt that way and now it's affecting him. So yeah, he's going to be vocal about it. And let's be real, at the end of the day, LeBron doesn't care what anyone thinks about him. Like, it's just
as he should
at this point in his career, like, he's over that. He's no longer this villain where he needs to kind of like teeter the edge between, am I going to play into the villain or fight it? It's just, he is who he is. So I know that rubbed everyone the wrong way, but LeBron's going to go to sleep LeBron at the end of the day.
Wasn't that his old quote? Didn't he say
it
that?
Was, and I used that
back.
to
Wow.
death when he said that, like on a weekly basis, because he was so damn right.
When he said that quote, I
cringed. Man. I knew the organization was like, no, he's LeBron, so we can't say anything, but we don't like that.
Yeah, that was a bit of a rough one. Thank you so much for being here, Greg. Greg, you know what? Wait, I want you to settle this. Tyler Hero, did you see the picture of him in the Charmin outfit? Right, he was wearing that
see-through shirt. I don't
like
know
a
why
see-through
Michael
white
keeps
shirt.
It looks like toilet paper.
No, I don't think I have seen this. Where can I quickly see it?
Oh man, Allana, you need to send him the link. We should have done this before.
No, I don't have it.
Basically, he was wearing like a see-through white shirt where you could see like his nips, the tattoos, everything. I'm just like, bro, I don't need to see that.
Michael was not a fan. I liked it personally, but
I'm searching Twitter right now, hoping that I could quickly find it, but it's not looking good for me. I'll have to get back to you guys because I'm going to come back. This was a lot of fun.
Oh,
so
yeah.
the next time I come back, we'll talk about Tyler Hero's nipples or whatever you guys are talking about.
Hey, we'll be streaming Wednesday at 8. Is it at 8, Allana?
It is at 8, Wednesday at 8. You guys are in for a treat because we are taking the pod to a live stream. So you can see me and Michael's pretty face for an hour of your time.
I've said this before. I have a face for radio, so we'll see how that goes on the stream on Wednesday. But Greg, thank you so much for being here. If you guys liked hearing Greg, first of all, if you don't know who Greg is, I don't really think you're a Heat fan, but it is what it is. You can follow him on Twitter at Greg Sylvander. Greg, it was an absolute pleasure, and we look forward to having you back because, like we've said, you're the dawn of culture within the network, man. We can't do the show without you, so thank you, man.
Thank you both for having me. This is super cool.
Of course. So, Allana, take us out because you did the intro with the what's up, y'all. Give us the last goodbye.
Thank y'all for listening is all I really got. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Michael5RSN. Correct? Yes. Okay. Head nod. And you can find me at Allana Tachauer, Tachauer.
We'll get better, y'all. Heat culture out.